Thank you all for coming today. I am really excited to show this content to you. My name is Jason Mellard. I am a high performance coach, a husband material coach, and the founder of Own Your Identity. And what I want to talk about today is navigating SSA, what works. I do feel like I should give a couple disclaimers at the beginning due to this topic. This is all my opinion. This is what has worked for me. Take what you like and leave the rest. I know everybody won't agree with everything I share, but hopefully it will be helpful and maybe it will open your mind to a few more ideas that you hadn't thought of before. So I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so put a 1 in the chat if you have ever felt like unwanted same-sex attractions has held you back in life. Maybe you felt that it was like a big anchor that was keeping you stuck and you wanted to move forward in life, but you felt like, wow, I don't know what to do with these attractions. And they just seem really heavy. I know that's been the case for me in the past. I thought, I don't know that I'm going to be able to have the life that I truly want because of these attractions. Or, I feel shame over the fact that I have these attractions. And that's keeping me stuck from interacting with other people more and being more vulnerable. I may have told myself that because I have these attractions or because I've acted on them in a way that wasn't authentic to who I believed I really was, that I'm broken and maybe I shouldn't really put myself out there with other people. I should allow people to keep me at an arm's distance. And that's held me back in life. But I want to consider allowing our unwanted attractions maybe to feel a little bit lighter, maybe to keep an open hand and not allow them to direct how fast we can move through life or not to allow them to hold us back. One of the reasons that I believe having a lighter hand on our view of our attractions is honestly because it's more productive. We can get a lot more done when we don't feel like something is holding us back. You may not have thought, okay, somebody is talking about productivity in relation to same-sex attraction. Maybe you're not surprised because you've read some of my content before. But like I said, I'm a high performance coach. And I wanted to bring something kind of fresh and new to the SSA recovery space. A little background, 25 years ago, I felt really stuck in life, so much so that I'd ended up in the emergency room. I had depression and anxiety. Life was just not working for me. And I did a lot of counseling, a lot of 12-step work. I went to support groups for men who had experienced childhood sexual abuse, support groups for people experiencing same-sex attraction. It did a lot of deep work, grief work, trauma work, inner child work, all of that. And it was beautiful. And I have training in a lot of those things and have led small groups and Celebrate Recovery and recovery groups for folks experiencing same-sex attraction. And I got to a place where, life was working pretty well. I ended up getting married, had kids, and I, thought to myself, this is 3 years ago. Life is great, but I still find myself prioritizing safety. I find myself prioritizing making sure that nothing bad is going to happen in life because I had committed to making sure I wasn't going to experience more trauma or making sure, that life wasn't going to be as hard as it had been for so long, and especially as a kid. And safety was something that I really prioritized. But I thought, man, life is short. God has blessed me with time here on earth, talents, and so much that I could do. And so I decided I wanted to take my life to the next level in many areas. So my marriage and my fitness and my career. And I believe that I wanted to be a good steward of everything that God had given. I didn't want to bury my talents, underground because I just wanted to play it safe. And so I learned a lot of things. And when I look at same-sex attraction in my life from um, the standpoint of, am I allowing it to dictate, where I'm putting my energy? And so energy, for example, is something that could be drained out of us when we're looking at our attractions or anything in life as really heavy and pulling us back. They're taking our energy away. But if we are a little bit lighter with it, we have more energy to put towards things that we want to do in life. goals that we have. And one goal may be to really dig into our attractions and get curious about them. And we're going to be able to do that better when we have a lighter approach. And I also want to think about it's easy to say, my attractions, they mean this. And because of that, I feel this way. And it's just really hard. Totally honor that. But sometimes it could be a little bit more courageous, a little bit more scary to say, maybe my attractions don't have to mean what I thought that they have meant. Maybe there is more that's out there for me, and I can be more hopeful. Sometimes that's more scary than just believing something is heavy and big. So energy, courage, productivity, those are some of the things that I've learned through high performance coaching and really personal development and taking my life to the next level. Other things as well, but that's a little bit of the lens I'm coming from. If you can look at something as, okay, maybe this is lighter, maybe actually my attractions, dealing with them and how I deal with them is something that could propel me forward in life rather than keep me stuck. Maybe it's going to help me to move towards my goals rather than away from my goals. How can we utilize what's going on in our lives, the good, the bad, the indifferent, any area of our life, and decide that it's working for us rather than working against us? I've always thought also in my life, I felt like my attractions were really big. And in many ways they were. I know the physical arousal and the emotions that were in my body, it was kind of overwhelming at times. And it felt really big. The thoughts that were in my mind, the pattern of thinking, I just couldn't stop thinking about my attractions or the guy that was in front of me or, the slip up I had looking at porn. It just took up a lot of my mental energy, the space in my head, and it just seemed really big. I felt small compared to it. But honestly, we're bigger than our attractions. We're bigger than the shame that we've experienced, because of them. We're bigger than the story that we've told ourselves about them. And when we look at ourselves as bigger and that as smaller, we're able to get a little bit more curious about it. We're able to look at it kind of more productively. They can feel big, but we're bigger than them. And oh my goodness, God is so much bigger than us. So in comparison, this is how I like to view them, something that I can observe, something I can hold, and I get to decide what I do with them. Also, I believe that my attractions are really complex. And that's one I'm going to agree with. I think it is pretty complex. When you talk about, okay, oh my goodness, how did these attractions develop? These feelings, sensations in my body when I look at a guy, just kind of those automatic reactions. There's so many theories about it. I'll cover a few in a little bit, but I think that's very complex. I think the way my body responds when I see an attractive guy, I don't know how all that works. I don't know how I get these emotions just in response to it and how my body reacts and how the thoughts all intertwine together. I mean, it's really complex. It's kind of confusing. And that's just how God has made our bodies and our minds. I mean, there's just so much there. But often when I look at something and I think it is complex, or I focus on the complexity of it, and I want to take some action on it, our brain can only handle so many different things at once. And you can think, okay, I want to move this direction in life, and here are the steps to get there. If there's more than like 2 or 3 steps, your brain's like, I don't know, that's a lot. It goes from 1, 2 to a lot. So it's helpful, it's more productive, it saves my energy to think of it simpler. And so one simple way that I like to think of unwanted same-sex attraction is through the lens of separateness. I really do believe that the biggest driver of unwanted same-sex attraction is a belief and feeling of separateness. I've felt separate in my life from other men, from masculinity, from my power, from my purpose, from my sense that I have what it takes, from my father, from my voice, lots of things. And because of that, I wanted to connect. I wanted so bad to connect with other men. I wanted to be one of the guys. I wanted to get my man card somehow. I didn't know how that was going to happen. I guess put a 1 in the chat if you've ever felt separate from something that you wanted so bad and you didn't know how to connect. I wanted to be like these guys that I saw. I wanted to connect with them, but I felt other. I felt like I was on the sidelines, just looking in. And that was hard. It was really, really hard. And I've watched other people do that too. My father, he experienced same-sex attraction his life as well, and he always felt like he was uniquely flawed. He felt like he was different and separate. He ended up going into the gay lifestyle after I graduated college, and you know, he still felt separate. It was something that just seemed embedded in him. And as much as he tried, he just couldn't connect. And I felt that way before. The harder I've tried, the less it seemed to work. And here's one of my theories. Okay. I kind of believe that my body got on board, really trying to help me out. If connecting with a guy was going to be the answer, then it was going to help. Uh, there was a time I remember in college when, I looked at a guy and I thought if he would be my friend, then I would feel okay. If I had his body or his confident appearance, then I would feel confident and I would feel like I could do anything. I would feel strong. And, somehow maybe even if I was intimate with him, then I could feel finally like I'm okay and somehow everything is going to be okay. And I think, some sexual energy came up and my body was like, yeah, let me help you out. You want so bad to connect. And here's a way to do it. And I got aroused. I got flooded with emotion and it felt like electricity running through my body, honestly. I remember that first time it was just so strong when I looked at another man and just had that experience. And I wasn't trying to have it. I was just looking at him and had these questions that came into my mind, these ideas and thoughts that somehow, if I connected with him as a friend or in any way, that maybe that would be a good thing. And my body just got on board. And like I said, it just felt big, it felt really huge, and it felt good too. I mean, felt all kinds of things in those times when I had this physical sensation, like these big feelings in my body. And this is how I would describe it if I was going to give a visual to it. And I didn't know what to do about it. Just was very confusing. So I've talked about the idea of separation, my belief that unwanted attraction, biggest driver is a belief and feeling of separation. Talked a little bit about that sensation that I've experienced in my body. But one of the things I also want to talk about, the third bucket, if you will, is the story that we tell ourselves about those two things. So, for example, I could tell my story to myself that those things are wrong. Those feelings that I have, that they shouldn't be. It's just wrong that I have them. Or all that stuff in my past, the belief that I have, it's just wrong. I'm wrong. It's bad. I remember when I first had those big attractions, I was really scared. I put a one in the chat if you've ever thought that, oh, this is just bad. This is wrong. This is scary. Um, that really was my experience when I first had these. And then I started thinking thoughts like, this is a problem. I am broken. Wow. I really felt alone when I looked around that class I was in and everybody else kind of seemed to have it together. And all of a sudden, I had this huge experience that only I knew I was having. And I'm alone in it. There's somebody there that is seeing this big thing that's happening inside of me. And I didn't know, who to tell or where to turn. I remember going to my pastor in college and finally telling somebody, for the first time, I have this thing, I have these attractions, I don't know what to do. And he didn't know what to do. He didn't have a great response. And I felt alone. I've also, started asking questions like, what's wrong with me? And how do I fix this? Or, what does this mean for my future? Questions are really powerful. And when you ask yourself the question, what's wrong with you? Then your brain is going to try really, really hard to answer that question. And it's got an assumption underneath that question. By asking that, you're telling yourself that there is something wrong with you, when in fact, you're just having an experience. Um, how do you fix this? Well, you're assuming that it needs to be fixed. And I have spent so much of my life trying to figure out, what this is that's wrong with me and how do I fix it. And it just kind of sent me down a rabbit trail when there was a lot more to life that God had for me. And what does this mean for my future? Maybe that's not a terrible question to ask, but my tone, the attitude I had with that is my future is gloomy. Something bad is going to happen in my future, or it's bleak. That was the idea. That was just the sense that I had. That was a story I was telling myself, and so I freaked out. That's how I felt when I had that. But what if we take a little bit more neutral approach? What if in that moment, when I was young, somehow I would be smart enough to say, okay, this is interesting. I don't have to put a big judgment towards it. I can just kind of observe it and say, I'm having this feeling, doesn't have to be right or wrong. I don't have to be right or wrong. I can really acknowledge that I don't know what this is, but it's real. I'm not going to pretend it's not there. There's no way I could pretend it wasn't there. And I can acknowledge that this is confusing. I really don't know what to do with this. But I'd like to say, this is an experience that I'm having. It's not me. It's not pervasive. It doesn't mean anything about my identity or who I am. And I like that approach a lot better. I can be honest, really. I can just say this feels good. These romantic emotions that I have, some of these sensations, it feels good. And I can also be honest that I feel scared. I don't have to believe that it's scary, but I can acknowledge that I feel scared. And the questions I could ask, what do I think about this? I know what the culture might say. I know what my body is telling me right now. It's telling me to connect with this guy intimately. It is driving me to do that. But is that really what I want to do? Well, no. What is it that I think about this? And who could I tell? And what might this mean? I don't know. We could get curious about it. It has potentially something to tell us. And we could ask that question without kind of doom and gloom associated with it. Another series of thoughts, another type of story we could tell ourselves is that, my same-sex attraction is a teacher. Maybe it has something to tell me. Maybe it has something that I can learn from. It could be a tool for my personal growth. Maybe it's an opportunity in some way. I don't know what that would be, but maybe it is. I could be open to that. I could tell myself, this can be the beginning of a growth journey. I get to clarify my true desires. If my body is telling me this, if my brain is telling me this, if the culture is telling me this, well, that's really a lot of pressure to decide what it is that I think, what I really want, and where I want to go. And taking time to really clarify what it is that you want in life and who you are, that's a good thing. And wow, it takes a lot of faith to be in a place where what you really truly desire is different than what your experience is and what you feel. And that turns our face to God, turns our direction to God. And I think it's really a powerful thing to have that opportunity for our faith to grow. How can I use this to propel me forward? Who can I connect with? And what can I learn? And that helps me to feel connected. I think, okay, maybe there's an opportunity to connect more with folks. Maybe this is a way that I can actually be less separate from other people by sharing vulnerably, by, getting some community of guys around me to support me in this. So I talked about the story in detail. Well, let's talk about that sensation in a little bit more detail as well. I have felt that sensation is pretty big, like I mentioned, and pretty complex. I felt like, it's this huge thing that's around me, inside of me, and, this electricity that's moving through me that I couldn't seem to control. But you know what? There are other things in life that also feel big. They also feel like we don't know what to do with. There are other feelings that we have, like anger is something that can feel really strong, really powerful, and maybe directing us to do something that, we don't really want to do what it's maybe telling us to do. Or heat and cold, they're affecting our body. They're affecting, what how do we want to respond to that? Grief, sadness, hunger. We have all kinds of experiences in life. And when we decide that we are not the experiences, whatever they are, but we are the person that's observing the experience that we're having, that's a really key thing we are the person that's observing our emotions. We observe our thoughts. We observe our experiences. So I could have a thought in my head, like all the ones I mentioned just a minute ago, and I could say, I am the person observing these thoughts. I get to decide if I attach myself to them, see where they take me. I get to decide if that question that popped into my head is one that I'm going to spend time trying to answer or not, or I get to decide what I want to do with the feelings that I have. And again, I'm bigger than all of that. And so when I understand that I am actually the one observing all of it, even if it seems like it's inside of me, pervasive, all of those things, then again, I can get a little bit more curious about it. I can feel like I have more power than I have felt before. Because feeling helpless, feeling powerless is a terrible feeling. I can also simplify it a bit. When I think of just same-sex attraction, oh my goodness, what is that? In the moment, the actual experience of it, it's some physical arousal, some romantic feelings, and patterns of thinking. That's not that bad. I can handle that. I can observe it. I can look at it with curiosity, and I can believe that, I'm bigger than these things. I don't want to dismiss them. They're real. I put this picture in here more as, okay, we'll see where this is going to go. Let's find out what's next. Let's figure out what I'm going to do with it. I care about it. It's real, but I got this. Because there's sensations, SSA sensations, they're not harmful, they're not permanent, and they're not controlling. They can't tell us what to do. We get to observe the sensations, emotions, and thoughts. We can even think of them as just kind of hanging out with us on the couch. They're separate than us, and they can be around, they can be present, but not potent in our life. And then we get to decide what action we want to take in response. So we could act on those sensations and move in that direction, just like we could act on the anger sometimes that we feel and move in that direction. Or, we could let them pass. They're not going to hang around forever in that moment. All feelings come and go. And, if you think about it, sometimes I've had a desire to look at porn, or I've been looking at a guy and I just thought I can't get him out of my head. And it just seems impossible. But if you're in that place and all of a sudden you get a call that your mother has fallen and she's in an ambulance being taken to the emergency room, are you going to think about that guy anymore? No, he's going to be right out of your head and you've got something else on your mind. So this is just an example of something that seems so big, it seems like it's not going to go away. In an instant can go away. We don't have to force it to go away, but I'm just trying to give you an idea that maybe it's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit more possible for it not to be so big. And then I love this one, get curious. If I've got the time, maybe I have other things that I want to do that day. Maybe I just want to put them on the shelf for a little bit, let them hang out with me on the couch. But hey, I've decided that my personal growth is important to me. I've decided that this is something in my life that I want to explore more. And I've carved out time in my life to really get curious about it. And I believe that it's a productive thing. So let's talk about that some. I love the idea. Some questions that I can ask myself when I have decided to get curious is, what type of attraction is this? Am I feeling admiration towards a guy? Am I feeling a visual attraction? Do I have a physical, emotional attraction, a romantic attraction towards him? Is it lust? Is it envy? Is it just curiosity that I'm experiencing? It's kind of helpful to name it. And naming it is going to remind us that we're bigger than it. We're the ones observing it. We're not at the mercy of it. It's like, okay, what type of attraction is this really? And then I can ask myself, what am I longing for? Often it was connection that I wanted so bad. And I can see that and understand it and then believe that I can honor it. I can honor the fact that I want to connect with another guy. I can see that I'm longing for security. I'm longing for strength. I don't feel strong. I feel weak. That man visually, looks very strong. And if I can connect with that, or if I can be like that, then I can feel stronger too. What am I curious about? There are a lot of guys that maybe they didn't experience time in the locker room in school, or maybe they never saw their dad without his clothes on. They maybe just didn't get exposed to a lot of other guys naked. And they might be curious about, I don't know, how do I measure up down there with other guys? So, I mean, that could be something you're curious about. Maybe I've been often curious about how can that guy seem so confident? The thing I was attracted to in guys the most was someone that looked like they had a confident sense of purpose. And it was a mystery to me. I thought, I don't know. How can he just be himself? How can he believe that people would actually want to hear something he has to say? He seems so gregarious and outgoing and, walks like he really has somewhere to go because he believes in himself and believes that he's important and has a great identity about him. Why don't you put a one in the chat if you've ever felt that? Like, that guy just has a confident sense of purpose. And I want that. I want to be that. I want to have that experience, but I don't know. I don't know how to get there. But I believe all of us long for that. I'm getting on a tangent here. We desire more, for our lives. We desire to make an impact. We desire to live alive fully every day and to believe that the future continually gets better. All right. So what is the feeling I desire? Okay. One of the things is that often what we actually desire is not necessarily the thing itself, but the feeling that we believe that's going to get us. So if I believe that, connecting with physically with a guy is going to give me a feeling of safety and security, then it's not necessarily that I want to have sex with him. I actually really want just to feel safe. I want to feel loved. I want to feel secure. I want to feel seen. I want to feel like I'm not alone. When we get curious about that and when we really study what is it that we're longing for, what is the feeling that we desire, then we're able to productively look at other ways, to get that feeling and to decide that I'm the one that says, okay, I do want these things. I can honor it. And I can go to God and ask him, how would you want me to experience a powerful feeling? You've put that desire inside of me, and I want to give that to you. Honor it all. Honor those feelings that you desire. Honor those longings that you have. Understand that you're going to be curious about so many things, and don't judge yourself for it. And then take intentional action. We get to decide what we want to do and decide ahead of time what that is. Okay, well, let's look at the bigger one that I think is a big driver of it all is that idea of separation and, talk about something that is complex. There are a lot of things that have been researched that people have written books about that really resonate with me. And when I sat down with a mentor, when I first was digging into my unwanted attractions, he shared some things that for me was really empowering. You may not resonate with these. You may not be empowered by having a list of potential contributors to same-sex attraction. And I may be wrong anyway. And I don't mind if I'm wrong. I'm not too worried about it. But for me, these were helpful. The masculine ideal feels out of reach. And I believe for me, that was a big driver of a feeling of separation and of my unwanted attractions. I wanted something and I didn't know how to get there. And I would look at these guys and obsess about them. And I studied what they wore and how they talked and how they acted and everything that they were about. They were a mystery to me. And I believe, I couldn't get there. They were had this man card that I didn't, and I wanted it so bad, but it was always just a little bit out of reach. Lack of identification with other men, potentially over-identification with the feminine, neglect, trauma, abuse, bullying, porn, lack of attention, affirmation, and affection. I didn't get a whole lot of that when I was a kid, and I longed for it so much. I really find these helpful, and these are things that we dig into in my coaching program, and I believe that they're really powerful to understand. But again, they're really complex. Okay, and if I take a look at all those things, and I think, oh, the trauma, the abuse, I don't even know where to begin, and I need to fix it all, right? So I can get rid of these attractions and not be stuck with them. I believe, the simplicity of, like I've mentioned, a belief and feeling of separateness. When I just have that idea in my head, it just gives me a little bit of a relief. is when I looked at all the things on the other page, kind of stressed me out. And it makes it seem like, okay, to get where I want to go, there's this huge mountain to climb. But when I just say, generally it's a feeling of separateness that is, you know, holding me back, or I feel like is holding me back, or maybe a contributor, that just helps me to simplify it a little bit. And like I said at the beginning in my life, I felt separate from other men, my father, my voice, my body, my emotions, my power, my sense of worth and value, a sense of purpose, a compelling future, God's favor and love. And it was really hard to be in a place where all those things, felt out of reach. When I was sexually abused as a kid, it led to the feeling that I didn't have a say over what was happening to my body. I didn't have a voice. I wasn't allowed to have my own emotions. I was told that wasn't right to feel the way I felt. I didn't feel very valuable. There were things I wanted in life that I really felt passionate about and I wanted to get excited about. But, nobody really fanned those into flames. Or sometimes I didn't feel like those were really fanned into flames. And so I just remember thinking, okay, I need to maybe figure out what other people expect of me. And I overlaid my father's behavior onto God. And I really believed he looked down on me with judgment. He was always kind of measuring my success and whatever it was I was doing. And I didn't fully believe and feel God's favor and love. I told myself, I don't have what it takes. So I set out to get what I lacked. I tried really hard. I tried all kinds of things. And like I said, if I connect with another man, then I'll feel safe and believe I'm lovable. If I achieve and receive praise, then I'll feel confident and I'll believe that I'm valuable. If I possess qualities I think I lack, then I'll feel worthy and believe I'm enough. If I can rid myself of these unwanted attractions, then I'll feel relieved. And maybe then I'll believe anything is possible. You see a few words that are common here: feel and believe. I think if these things happen, then I can feel this and I can believe that. The thing is, none of those are required, to feel safe or to believe something. We get to choose how we feel every moment. We get to choose what we believe every moment. We can generate feelings. We have a lot more power to do that than maybe we think. We don't have to rely on outside forces to make us feel something. We can decide we want to feel something. We can decide what we want to believe. And like I said, I think even my body tried to help me out, but none of it worked. The more I tried to be like other men or fix that separation I felt, the more I was convinced I came up short. Because when I acted on the belief that I had to go out and get something, when I believed that I wasn't masculine enough, I didn't have what it takes, and I had to go out and get masculinity or get something else, every step I took towards that end was reinforcing the fact that I didn't have it. So it actually just made it worse. So what it had to do was start with the belief that I was already fully a man. I already had what it takes. And then I could grow that. How did I make that simple in my life? All it took was a decision. It was a decision to believe that what God said about me was true. Without Christ, we are separated by sin and shame. But when we put our love and trust in him, we become new creations with new identities. And because of that, we can own the truth of God's word about us. Not just that we were created in his image, which is amazing, something that everybody on the planet, has. Everybody was created in God's image. But as believers in Christ, we can identify with the truth of who we are as God's adopted children and heirs. And so I look at all those things that I felt separate from. I get to align them with God's truth. I get to look at God's truth and speak that over myself. My separation that I felt from other men, Romans 12:5 says, "So we, though many, are one body in Christ and individually members of one another." Genesis 1:27 says, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them." Ephesians 1:5, when I look at the separation I felt from my father, it says, God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. When I feel that separation from my voice, Isaiah 54 says, "The sovereign Lord has given me his words of wisdom, so that I know how to comfort the weary." When I look at the separation I felt from my body, Psalm 139:14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." The separation I felt from my emotions, 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Matthew 5:4, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." When I felt separate from my power, I can say Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." God's power is made perfect in weakness, 2 Corinthians 12:9. The separation I felt from a sense of worth and value, Romans 5:8 says, "But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." If we were loved so much as sinners, oh my goodness, how much more maybe are we loved as adopted children of God? How much more value and worth do we have because of that? And the separation I felt from a sense of purpose, that was one of the things that I wanted so much. I wanted to feel like I mattered in life. Jeremiah 29 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." The belief that I had a compelling future that I didn't feel was a reality for me. 1 Corinthians 2:9 says, "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no heart has imagined what God has prepared for those who love him." I love that. The separation I felt from God's favor and love. My friend John turned me on to this verse recently, and I think it's one of my favorites here that I've listed. Put a 1 in the chat if you like this one. Zephaniah 3:17. "He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing." My goodness, when I was a kid, I don't think I ever would have imagined, or it wouldn't have occurred to me that God exults over me with loud singing. No, that wasn't who I was. I wasn't somebody that God would want to exult over. He didn't love me so much that it would just quiet me. But in Christ, I have great worth and value. I have what it takes. I have purpose. I have a compelling future. And because of that, I will share my story vulnerably. Because of that, I will confess my transgressions. I will go to God with my hurt and disappointment. I will give and receive love courageously. We do these things out of our identity, not to get our identity. You see the difference there? I spent so much of my life trying to get this identity, but we have to own the identity that God has already given us. That's where you have to start from. And from there, you get to grow. And I will do it knowing that sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. I get uncomfortable when the truth doesn't feel true. You know, I listed all those verses. They sounded great, but sometimes I don't believe it. Sometimes in the moment, what feels true are the attractions that I have, the desire to look at pornography, the desire to connect with another guy in an unhealthy way, or the desire to shame myself, or just to give up on my dreams. And it can be uncomfortable to move forward in life towards the truth and out of the truth when it doesn't feel true. But I'm okay with the difference there because I believe that in the discomfort is where I find the face of God. When the truth doesn't feel true, Christ gets to be where I turn. It is easy to do life when things are going well and when what I want to do just feels like the right thing to do. But when I'm in the wilderness, when I'm in a place where, I don't know, I just don't get it, I'm confused, I don't know what to do in life, that's when God is strong in our weakness. That's when we get to look to him. So I feel like this is one of the great opportunities that we have in navigating same-sex attraction. And, you know, when we say, this is an opportunity, I get to see the face of Christ more, I believe then that he's going to empower me to grow. Because what is hard, like I said, is when what is true is so far apart than what feels true. That's just another area of separation that we can experience. What is nice is when they are connected, when what feels true actually is true. You know, think about it. We are often trying to make this happen. If I'm feeling really lonely, if I'm feeling bad about myself, if I'm feeling ashamed, what's one of the things that I typically do? I'm going to call a friend and he's going to tell me, no, Jason, you do have great worth and value. It's going to be okay. And all of a sudden, I'm believing what he says. What he is saying and what the truth is starts to feel more true. And it makes life a little bit easier when that's the case. And I call that integration. And I believe that it's a worthy endeavor. It's something that is an opportunity to turn our gaze towards Christ. Some of the tools I use with my clients to do this is identity clarification. Talk about something where we look to Christ and say, who am I? Tell me who I am. Let me get clear on that. Let me live out of it. Gratitude and acceptance. That can point me to Christ because I am grateful for the salvation that I have. I can believe that I am accepted by him and I can accept life, as it is, knowing that this world is broken and I'm going to be with him in perfection in the future. I can practice mindfulness. I can observe my thoughts and feelings and the sensations that I have. And that allows me to hear the voice of God a little bit better when I can kind of pull some things apart and sit and be okay with my emotions and not feel like I have to escape or run from them. I can process emotions. I can do some inner child work. I really love that. When I look on my past and I look at the boy who is abused or really alone, I get to see that, I wasn't fully alone because I can see that Christ was there too. That's another opportunity to see Christ. I can work on my beliefs. What are the unconscious, negative, limiting beliefs that came out of a lot of those experiences when I was a kid? And then I get to go to God and say, this is what seems true. This is what I'm telling myself. My mind is telling myself. And let me compare it to God's word. And it really forces us to know the word of Christ better, to be able to hear his voice more clearly. I can look at the fears that I have. I can grieve. This is a very powerful one because when we get to the other side of grief, we experience joy. It's not just more and more grief. That's what I had believed. And we can invite God into that. When we grieve, we can really picture his arms around us. We can reach out to other people and have them support us as well. We can look differently at our past, and then we can look to the future and know that, God has got us. He's got a plan for us. He's put a life in us and a legacy that he wants us to leave. The separation, the sensation, the story, when I put all those three things together, I call that self-agency. When I have more ownership of those things, when I understand them a little bit better, when I can really see that I'm bigger than these things and that I have the ability to change the story. I have the ability to observe the sensation. I have the ability to get curious, about the separation that I feel and go to God and other people with that. Self-agency is the sense that you are the agent of your own actions and that you have control over your life. It describes people who believe they are responsible for their thoughts and actions and feel in control. I wanted all of that, and I didn't feel any of it. And I attributed a lot of it to my same-sex attractions. But really, it was learning some skills. I believe that self-agency is not enough. When I really think about the concept of owning my identity, I believe that there has to be a strong belief in a compelling future. Because those things that are in that self-agency bucket, it really is more about the present and the past. But our identity incorporates the future as well. And if we don't in the present believe that the best is yet to come, if we don't decide that we have a mark that God wants us to make on the world, if we don't get clear about what is it that we want to leave as a legacy, who do we want to be, what do we want people to say about us when we're gone, about who we were and the mark that we made. I think all of this is so important to really feeling full and purposeful. And for me, becoming that confident man with a sense of purpose that I long for so much. And starting out from the place of, I'm a strong person, I have a strong identity, I have a strong purpose, and moving out of that. And that has been one of the most powerful things in my unwanted same-sex attractions diminishing. Like I said earlier, 1 Corinthians 2:9, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no mind has imagined the things that God has prepared for those who love him. So, some more benefits, I believe, to really digging into your SSA and getting curious about it. It allows us opportunities to integrate truth, to clarify identity, to live intentionally, replace false beliefs, embrace vulnerability, deepen relationships, practice courage, gain confidence, increase optimism, set an example, inspire others. And I believe the biggest thing is it gives us an opportunity to know Christ more because we have to. I couldn't do life on my own. It was just not working. What was true and what felt true were so far apart that I couldn't manage life on my own. I had to turn to Christ. I had to get some help. And I really grew quite a bit through all of that. And then it can inspire us to make him known. I believe the reason that we're here on earth is to know Christ and to make him known. So I'd love to share a little bit about what I do in my group coaching. So if you could just put a yes in the chat if you would be interested in me sharing a little bit about what I do with guys on a regular basis. It's the thing that I'm super passionate about, and it has been a pleasure to meet with so many guys, to be able to hear their story and to help them navigate into a life of purpose and possibility. So I'm going to take you here on what I call a hero's journey towards a life of purpose and possibility. We're going to arm ourselves with the belief that what God says about us is true and sharpen our skills of gratitude, mindfulness, and imagination. I'll guide you to honor your story, to voice your longings, and honor the boy whose longings were dismissed or tainted. You will feel the pain, grieve the losses, and revisit the times, maybe when all hope seemed lost, that you didn't know what the future was going to look like and everything just seemed too big. But you won't do it alone. You will have a band of brothers to lift you up and urge you forward. We're going to go into the pit and come out stronger for it. And together, we will encounter the goodness and presence of God. We will offer our deepest longings to him, truly believing that he is what is best. We'll partner with our Creator to envision our legacy and chart our future. And we will offer the journey of transformation to others, knowing Christ deeply and making him known. We will own our identity and live a life of purpose and possibility. The course has 3 modules, each are 4 weeks. The first module is Find Your Voice. The second is Honor Your Story, and the third is Chart Your Future. So we're really going to start with getting a sense of power to believe that we're bigger than we thought we were. We're bigger than our attractions. And we are the ones that have the self-agency over our thoughts and our emotions, our bodily sensations, and we get to decide what we want to do. Honor Your Story is all about digging deep. It's a lot of that stuff that maybe you would traditionally associate with recovery in same-sex attraction. You know, we're going to learn to see what our longings were. We're going to work to gain intimacy and understand, you know, what it is that we truly desire in connection with other people. We're going to befriend our younger self that felt alone, maybe abused or abandoned, maybe was bullied and mistreated. And we're going to look at our fears and beliefs. All the things that we do in looking at the past is really so we can extract the beliefs that are holding us back today. And because life happens in the present. And looking at the past, and when I can understand what those beliefs are, what are the rules that I've generated that I'm living by that are limiting my life, then I can start to question them. I can start to change them. And then we will grieve. Then we'll look to our future. And that starts with believing that God is what is best. That has to be the foundation. And I can imagine what I would like. I can give my longings to him. I can vividly picture what it is that I want the most in life. The thing I ask my clients when I first meet them, you know, or what are your goals? You know, if you could snap your finger and ask yourself, you know, what would life look like in 5 years? What would you want that to be? We've got to think big and live from that. But we offer it to God, whatever it is, and believe that either going to give it right back to us or he's going to give us something even better, because no eye has seen, no ear has heard what God has planned for those who love him. And we're going to get clear about what that legacy is that we want to leave and work backwards on, okay, how do we get there? How do we move forward with the purpose that we feel God has put into our hearts? And heck, you know, if we don't know exactly what that is and what that looks like, we can believe that we can show up each day with a sense of purpose. We can walk into the day purposeful, and that is a beautiful feeling. And then we'll pass that on. The last session of the 12 weeks, we have written letters to each other, to the other 4 to 6 guys that are in the group, and we'll share those out loud. And it is so powerful. We're also going to write a letter to the person we haven't met yet that is experiencing their attractions maybe for the first time and doesn't know what to do and feels alone, believing that God's going to bring that person to us that we can love and we can share and we can help. So what's included in that? So you get your own identity daily coursework. This is my baby. I've created a course that I believe digs deep into our identity, into our needs and longings, into the ideas that we had that were limiting or that moved us forward. What did we believe about masculinity? What do we believe about our future? You'll get an action step each weekday with homework along with that. And then you'll have 12 immersive 2-hour coaching calls with a group of 4 to 6 men. And those are really powerful calls that are not accountability. This is not an accountability group. We'll go over some of the things that you did on your own, but then we'll have an exercise that is truly unique just to that 2-hour experience. We'll do some live coaching. This third one is really amazing. It's 24/7 community for the small group, the 4 to 6 guys, to talk to each other throughout the week. In each of the homework assignments, there'll be a little prompt saying, share your response to this question in the small group chat. Or you did this really kind of heart-wrenching exercise. Well, tell us how you feel. And I'm a part of that small group chat, and I'll be responding to what everybody says. And I'll be sharing my own responses to the questions, or I'll share my own experience. Just something difficult that happened to me during the day. So that's something that I'm with you 24/7, and you're with your band of brothers throughout these 12 weeks. And it's one of the most powerful parts of the coaching program. You have 2 one-on-one coaching sessions with me. And then I have a whole nother coaching program that's very structured for high performance coaching that goes through developing more clarity, courage, influence, productivity, energy, and you'll get a discount off of that. And then as a bonus, this is huge. You'll have lifetime access to an exclusive community for alumni. It's on the Mighty Network social platform. It's for ongoing encouragement, accountability, and growth. You'll have lifetime access to current and future courses that I create, and then monthly mastermind calls. So once a month on the second Friday, we'll meet for 2 hours. And the first hour will be to connect, and maybe we'll have some coaching. Then in the second hour, I'll bring in another professional in the SSA recovery space, a licensed professional counselor, or another leader, or somebody in the personal development space, because I want to be accountable to the goals that I've set during the program. I want somebody to cheer me on for those. I'd love for you to book a free coaching session to apply. You can go to ownyourIdentitynow.com/discovery. But we've got tons of free resources out there. I think some of y'all have listened to my podcast. I've also done a couple other master classes. If you go to ownyourIdentitynow.com, you can see that. And then tons of articles. I'm tired of unwanted same-sex attraction holding people back. I don't want to see people feel stuck because of it. At the end of the day, these are all imperfect tools. They're here to help you unblock yourself from hearing the voice of God. That's really what is required. Because Christ's words, they brought the universe into existence. And whatever you do after this call, I want you to remember that Christ spoke worth, identity, and purpose into you. Own it. Thank you so much for your time today. I'd love to get your feedback. You can email me at hello@jasonmeller.com. If you do, I'll give you an urge processing worksheet that I've created. So when you feel like, oh, I just got to look at porn or I just have to act out, then you can fill it out, and it really helps you to make an empowered decision. So go ahead, ownyourIdentitynow.com/discovery. I would love to talk with you and hear your story.